Good morning, everyone. My name's Mike from Black Snake Productions. We're a local wildlife education company and training company. So absolutely love doing this talk today. I'm a little bit excited about this one because I've grown up here, spent my whole life here in the Yarra Ranges as an avid herpetologist, reptile enthusiast. I've always been out looking for these animals from day dot. So this is the kind of talk we've been kind of looking forward to. So this is specifically, I guess, my area of expertise, the venomous snakes, the reptiles found around the greater Melbourne area. So today, we're going to be looking at a few different species. We'll be jumping back and forth through a bit of a PowerPoint. We don't have, obviously, all the reptile species in the Yarra Ranges here at Black Snake Productions. And we do have some that we're not going to be able to display today just due to their size or due to, for instance, we do have a white-lipped snake in captivity, but unfortunately it's shedding at the moment, so not a suitable animal to bring out. But I do have a couple of venomous snakes here today. Depending on time, I'm very much hoping to do a bit of first aid as well at the end for snake bite. But then again, if we do run out of time, or even if we do a very brief one, that's something else that we would like to do in the future potentially, either through just Black Snake Productions through Zoom, or hopefully with the Yarra Ranges Council, which we have done before. But I think it was last year we did a free seminar in September or October down at Lilydale. So anyway, we're going to get stuck into it. So I'm going to share the screen and stick up our little PowerPoint here, and we're going to get stuck into the reptiles of the Yarra Ranges. If I can get it to play. There we go. Fantastic. All right, so in the Yarra Ranges, we do have a nice little diversity of reptiles. Now, we don't have anything similar to Queensland. Now, just quickly, you can read, I'll put a little bit of text on the on there. I'm not going to specifically go over the whole thing, but you can, go through that little intro there. So we do have, a nice selection of skinks, one monitor species, 2 dragon species. We have roughly about 6 venomous snake species, but they come and go depending on the species found on the edges of the Yarra Valley. We'll get into that a bit later, for instance, the brown and the red belly. We have a number of skink species and obviously the blue tongues, and 1 indigenous turtle species. So there is on occasion a couple of other turtles that might be found in the Yarra Ranges, but they aren't actually a local animal as such. So they would be, accidentally introduced or purposely introduced or released pets. So we do have a nice diversity here. And look, as I mentioned, if you did watch the marsupial session, we have some pretty awesome habitats and micro habitats within the Yarra Ranges itself. So you've got, wet forests, you've got these dry woodland, we've got a little bit of grassland, we've got a little bit of tiny bit of heathland in some areas. And you've got mountain tops where you find things like the alpine copperheads, for instance, and the mountain dragons. And then you've got the big open woodlands where the lace monitors might be found. And down in the floodplains, between Coldstream, Yarra Glen, areas like that, Hillsville, you've got the lowland copperheads and tiger snakes, which then again, the tiger snakes are found pretty much through every single habitat. So these animals are pretty widespread. And we're going to start, I normally don't start with the biggest and most impressive, but today I kind of wanted to. So I thought we would start with my favourite reptile in the Yarra Ranges, not the most common one, definitely by far my favourite, and that is the lace monitor, Varanus varius. So the lace monitor is the 2nd largest lizard in Australia. It is very, very closely related genetically to the Komodo dragon as well, which is pretty amazing. And it is also a distant relative of a giant lizard that used to be found in Australia called Megalania. So these guys here are really a pretty incredible lizard. They are the most southern species of monitor lizard in Australia. And the only way that this goanna actually can live in the Yarra Ranges and reproduce here is due to termite mounds. So these guys here are pretty incredible animals that will actually, you know what? Let's get rid of the PowerPoint because we have one here. Oops, okay, sorry. I hit the wrong button. We go back to the last view slide. We won't look at the blue tongues just yet. There we go, stop the screen share. There we are. All right, so look, I'm much better with reptiles than I am with screens and technology and stuff. So forgive me if I do a few technical errors and things. All right, so we've got a lace monitor here. Now, he is not your normal looking lace monitor that you find anywhere in southern Australia. You might find this coloration up near the Murray River. This is more of an inland coloration. So lace monitors are pretty well distributed. You do find them into South Australia, up the east coast, right up to Cape York. And they're also found just on the other side of the divide in woodland up the Riverina area, the Murray-Darlings Basin. And in that region, you do get this colour form, which is what we call the Bell's colour form of lace monitor. Boss, can you stop whipping your tail, big boy? So this is Boss. And Boss here, oh, don't be in a mood. Boss here is going to move the mouse around and destroy the table and the setup because he's a little bit of a rat bag, but we love him. He's not fully grown. These guys can get almost twice his size, so they can get really, really big. Now, Boss here is a Bell's lace monitor, and you can, if anyone's seen laces around the Yarra Ranges, you'll know that you don't get this colour form here. Ours are really, really dark, and that makes perfect sense. We live in the most southern part of their range. The forests here don't allow a huge amount of sunlight to get through, and reptiles are cold-blooded. Well, technically, they're ectothermic, which means this animal here relies on the heat of the sun or an external heat source to help him function. So it would make sense that our lace monitors in the more southern regions, such as the Yarra Ranges, are going to be darker in colour to absorb more heat quickly. And so we do have a lot of very black lace monitors throughout the Yarra Ranges, and not this beautiful Bell's colour. And where are you going, big boy? Come on. The joys of working with animals. He's trying to climb up the chair. So lace monitors are an apex predator in this region. We do get them through the Dandenong Ranges. I've seen quite a good population of these guys at Warramate Reserve in Coruga. They're a bit isolated there. They probably get down from the hills at the back of hills over there. And look, we've even, when we moved in, we had a lace monitor regularly visit it up here towards Warburton. So they're definitely around. But they do face a few problems. Now, this is a species this year that's really taken a hit throughout its range. So their stronghold for this species within Victoria was actually East Gippsland. So 2020 has been terrible, and unfortunately it started with just destructive and horrible bushfires that wiped out so much wildlife. And the lace monitors there really took a hit. So that population, we actually don't know how much of the population, you know, from what was there is remaining. But these long-lived, slow-breeding species will have actually taken a massive hit from those bushfires. They were already listed as a threatened species in Victoria and in locally endangered in some areas. And they've definitely been you know, decimated around the Yarra Ranges over a long period of time. You know, we've had old timers say to us that when they grew up, if there was a lace monitor seen around the farm, around the home, it was seen as a dangerous pest and it was shot on site every single time. We now know that is completely opposite to what these guys are. So lace monitors, we're lucky to have them around here. They're fantastic. These guys eat foxes, not foxes, sorry. They eat baby rabbits, they eat rats, they eat mice. They introduce pests like that. But one of the things they will do as well is clean up carrion. So these guys will eat dead animals on the side of the road. They're an apex predator. They're important in the area. Look, if I have a lace monitor come and steal a few chook eggs, fantastic. That's his payment for getting rid of the pests around the area. But they're not a massive issue. So they're not going to, you know, completely wipe out, you know, for instance, Wagner's poultry or the free range Yarra Ranges chicken farm. So they're not going to cause massive issues or massive loss of income. The fact is that having a lace monitor around is really a good thing. Just remember that this species is a large, potentially dangerous lizard, so don't touch them, don't pick them up. They are actually technically venomous. His venom would, cause a bit of swelling, maybe a headache, but it's not going to do anything other than that. Their cousin, the Komodo dragon, will kill you with its venom, but these guys aren't that dangerous. And they have these extremely strong legs and claws, and very sharp claws, very long tail they use to protect themselves. Boss here is an exceptionally well-behaved lace monitor. Even in captivity, he's actually really gentle. So he's even, outside of the norm. So this is not an animal you want to feed, interact with, or pick up. If you find one in your backyard or an injured one, please call us. As the local snake catchers and reptile relocators, will come and deal with it, but please don't do it yourself. And we have had them quite regularly. In fact, there's one property in Wesburn up on the hill where there's lace monitors constantly getting into chook and turkey pen. And every year, it was a different lace monitor every year, and some of them were absolutely gigantic, like 3 times this size. So there is some big old laces around here. They're pretty amazing animals. And there's one thing you guys can actually do to help them, because I have found a couple of dead lace monitors in the Yarra Ranges on our down right next to carrion. So guys, if you do accidentally hit a wombat, a wallaby, or any animal, please stop, check the pouch, take it well off the road. That way any birds of prey or lace monitors that we are lucky enough to still have around here that come and are attracted to that prey item, that carrion, don't get skittled by a car as well. Because this is a massive issue, especially I've seen it in East Gippsland, with large numbers of laces being hit by cars next to carrion. And it's so easy for us to stop and just pull that thing off the road, that dead wallaby or whatever it is, make sure there's no baby in it, and help save a beautiful animal. By the way, the reason these guys need the termite mounds in this area to survive is because those termite mounds are basically temperature controlled. So termites temperature control their whole mound. And these guys here will lay their eggs in there, and it's an incubator. Now, we all know how unpredictable the Melbourne weather can be, especially up here in the Yarra Ranges. So these are fantastic places for their eggs to be safe, secure, at a constant temperature. And then, believe it or not, almost 12 months later, the mother will come back and dig out the babies. So the babies are too small to almost dig out themselves. So she'll come back and dig them out, which is absolutely incredible, and shows a small level of maternity in these monitor lizards. So they do breed very slowly. They do take a long time to get to breeding age. They are not a common sight in the Yarra Ranges, more towards the back of Hillsville, the back of the Dandenongs. You get a couple around the Dandenongs, not many. You get a couple around Gruyere, towards King Lake. The bushfires Black Saturday wiped out most of the ones towards Yarra Glen and Christmas Hills, but up towards Warburton this way, you do still get quite a lot, respectively. So there's not a huge amount, but they are around. All right. So I'll just quickly share the next screen. We're going to just jump back and forth as I mentioned, and we should be hopefully starting, not again from the start. Oh, fantastic. With our next lizard. So the second largest group of lizards around the Yarra Ranges are the blue-tongued lizards. And we do have 2 species of blue-tongues around the Yarra Ranges. Depending on where you live, you might get both, or you might get one or the other. So here we have at the top a blotched blue tongue. At the bottom we have an eastern blue tongue lizard. They're really quite easy to tell apart. So the blotched blue tongue, as its name suggests, is covered in blotches. They generally have a slightly larger head. The eastern blue tongue is long and slender, has a slightly smaller head, and very distinct markings with those eastern blue tongues. They have the black stripe behind the eye or around the face. And obviously they've got stripes, they've got bands, so these guys don't have blotches. Very rarely you can get some colour variation with blotched blue tongues that might make them look a little bit similar. Even rarer, very rare, you might get 2 species interbreeding and creating a hybrid, but that's pretty much, I've only seen that a couple of times in all the years. But you know what? I reckon we have a look at the actual animals. I've got them here on the table. Let's get rid of this and have a look at Itchy and Scratchy. All right, so this is Itchy and Scratchy. I didn't mean to, but I realised I pretty much grabbed the 2 darkest of each animal I have. So we have about 4 or 5 eastern blue tongues. We have about 20 blotched blue tongues. We do love our blotched blue tongues. and I didn't mean to, but I did grab the two darkest looking ones we've got. That's okay, and that's pretty respective of many of the blue tongues found in the Yarra Ranges, because once again, it's a cooler area. Those darker animals are going to heat up nice and quickly. You can see here with our eastern blue tongue, he's got a dark patch behind the eye. He's got stripes there, a little bit glossy. Gave him a bit of a wipe down before he started. They've been burying in the dirt outside in their lizard pit. And we have this female blotch blue tongue here. Big head and big blotchy patterns down the side. Now, the habitats you're going to find these guys in, blotch blue tongues, are more going to be slightly in your greener, wetter areas. Generally, we find more eastern blue tongue in grassland, open woodland. For instance, up on, around Warramate Reserve, some of the drier hills facing west, we do find a lot more easterns. We get the easterns down towards Lilydale, grassland areas, maybe at the front of the Dandenongs as well. Whereas with the blotch blue tongue lizards, you do find them more in the mountainous areas. We've found these guys in some of the more bush tracks up here in the mountains. Where I grew up in Mount Evelyn, I grew up on the aqueduct. We didn't have eastern blue tongues there, and that's part of Mount Evelyn. We only had blotch blue tongues, and they lived in a rock wall under a tennis court on the aqueduct there. So these guys, were quite a common sight. And to be honest, this is what really kicked my interest off in reptiles as a youngster, seeing these guys in the backyard, seeing them eat the snails and things. So they are fantastic little backyard buddies to have. Your blue tongue lizards will eat snails and slugs. They will maybe steal your strawberries on occasion. That's okay. They'll eat your dandelions. So they're getting rid of your pests and your weeds for you. Just remember, with all of these animals here today, these ones I'm showing you, these are my pets. These are not wild animals. These have been born, bred and raised in captivity. So it's extremely important that you don't pick up, touch or interact with these wild ones. And please don't feed wild animals. It creates dependency with things like a lace monitor. If you do live in an area where laces are found, that could be potentially dangerous. They'll come and take food out of your hand with your fingertips as well. With these guys, people can feed them really, unhealthy food items like canned dog food regularly, and it's not great for a wild animal. It's kind of like us eating Maccas all the time, so it's not ideal. But you can have a lizard-friendly garden with lots of hollow logs, lots of tussocks, lots of places for these animals to hide. Please don't use snail bait, because you'll get secondary poisoning, or the blue tongues just eating the snails that have eaten the snail bait directly. And a lot of those snail baits will say that it deters wildlife, or it's pet friendly. We had a Cavalier King Charles, a dog, that ate pet-friendly snail bait and didn't survive that encounter. So I wouldn't trust any poisons around your backyard. Rattle mouse bait or snail bait is not great for our wildlife or our lizard friends. So blue tongues like this are going to be found right throughout the Yarra Ranges. Look, we've had many snake jobs where we've been told that there's a tiger snake, hiding in amongst some vegetation, and it's an eastern blue tongue. We had a great job with Melbourne Water that were very responsible at the time, where they called us out to the reserve out in Belgrave where we had the Mini Bees Festival. Jen, can you remember the name? I've lost it in the top of my head.
Yeah, Birdsland Reserve.
Birdsland Reserve. I was going to say Platypus Reserve. Sorry. Because that's where you see the platypus on occasion. Birdland Reserve, there's a big drain, big grate there, and after a flood, all this material had washed up, and the Melbourne Water guys were clearing it, and there was a stripy body, and you couldn't see the head or the tail. You could just see that, and it looked like a tiger snake. I turned up and I thought, oh, that's a very thick tiger snake, very strong bandings. I got a bit closer and realised with the scale pattern that it was actually a blue tongue. So guys, really important, if you see a stripy scaly body, don't go grabbing it, go, oh, it's a blue tongue. Not last year, about 2 years ago now in Eltham, a child went to pick up a blue tongue in his backyard, and it did turn out to be a tiger snake. Luckily, he dropped it before it bit him. But really important to always wear gloves when you're gardening and make sure you don't touch anything scaly and stripy. On the other hand, though, if you want a pet reptile, there's nothing better than a pet blue tongue for kids. It's definitely what, kicked my interest off. Once again, these animals that we've got here, born, bred and raised in captivity, is so, so important. We don't touch the ones in the wild. We leave them alone. It's not only illegal, it's not great for the animal, it's kind of unethical. But it's so easy to get a pet blue tongue in captivity these days. There's so many people breeding them because they are just so good with kids. So this is pretty much the only reptile here we'd suggest for that. Definitely not these dudes next to me. Talk about them soon. They're not good pets at all. But yeah, blue tongue's definitely something that a lot of people at schools and at home probably have had. And, you know, the Lilydale High School's got an amazing reptile program. Some of the other high schools around the area definitely have some reptiles there as well, and even some of the primary schools. So, you know, these are great little animals to have for kids to learn, or even better, attract them to your garden. Then you don't have to have them in captivity as a pet, and you can see them in the wild naturally, and that's fantastic. That's always, you know, gives me an absolute massive kick. We've got a whole pit of lizards outside, captive bred ones, but when I see one walking through the garden, it's like a million times better. You know, I just love to see that. So that's even better. And on that note, especially with the guys that you're looking at now, please keep your cats inside. We talked about this last time. Cats kill 3 billion native animals each year in Australia, and they will destroy your lizard life in your backyard. Absolutely smash it. So please keep your cats inside and do snake avoidance training with your dogs so they don't touch blue tongues or snakes, and that's safe for them and the reptiles. All right, so out of the 4 larger, medium-sized skinks we get around the Yarra Ranges, we have our most to least common. The most common being the southern water skink. And I was just walking around East Warburton the other day and saw heaps of them. So these are quite common. You know, I grew up on Johns Crescent in Mount Evelyn. We didn't get them there, but we got them down the bottom of the hill at the Alinda Creek and the Mount Evelyn Reserve. And I think that's pretty close to where those long-nosed bandicoots have been found. So they're quite common, the southern water skink. Unfortunately, let's go to the other end of the spectrum, and the swamp skink is an endangered species. Now, look how stunning that creature is, and that is an absolutely gorgeous little animal, the swamp skink. Unfortunately, they are really endangered. I have never seen one in the Yarra Ranges. I've only seen them in Gippsland and on Mornington Peninsula. They have been found in Gladdisdale and a few other areas. But guys, if you ever see a skink like that, look, either take a photo of it, don't get closer, don't pick it up, don't touch it, and send it to us for identification, or for the Field Naturalist Club of Victoria, people will identify it there, or the Living Atlas of Australia. And yeah, look, protect that area if it's on your property, because that's an endangered animal and a really gorgeous little lizard. So they really do need, any population in the Yarra Valley really do need our help. The other 2 species that are not common, they're pretty scarce, but they are around, are the black rock skink and the white skinks. So I found them above Sylvan Dam, for instance, on the slopes there. The Warramate Reserve, some of the areas there. And I found them, you know, both within a few, when I was younger, a few minutes walk of each other. So even though we don't have a lot of rocky outcrops in the Yarra Ranges, such, not compared to places like East Gippsland or Northern Victoria, where we have, you know, massive granite escarpment, we do have black rock skinks still here nonetheless. One of their great little strongholds just outside the Yarra Valley, Yarra Ranges, is the Cathedral Ranges. So you do get and that's a perfect habitat for these guys, the black rock skink. So we have a couple of black rock skinks here at Black Snake Productions. They're not a massive skink, but you know, obviously not as big as a blue tongue, but definitely not as small as your garden skink. So this is a beautiful little guy. You're at bags, can stay in there, don't jump out. Get a bit closer with the camera. Very wiggly. I don't want this little girl to bite me. They're not an animal we handle a lot. We use these for displays, so not for handling. But I'll put her back. She doesn't like to be handled too much off the back. And also, I've got to be really careful because she's got a tail, just like a lot of smaller skinks. All these medium skinks and smaller skinks can drop their tail as a defense mechanism. She's got her original tail. She's, once again, captive bred, so she had no need to drop it, but we don't want to hang on to it. So kids, leave the skinks in your garden alone. Great to watch them. Throw a couple of bugs at them and things like that, but don't catch them too much, because if you drop the tail of a skink, it's really hard for it. That animal has to eat twice as much food to get all that energy back. They store energy in their tail. And if they don't get enough food, that could be the end of them, just by losing their tail when they're a little bit underweight after winter. So it's really important we don't try and muck with them. So they keep their original tails and they don't have to use that as a defense mechanism from us because, we're not predators to them. So if you do get these guys in the Yarra Ranges in your backyard, then you're pretty lucky. Southern water skinks, that's kind of common if you have any waterway. But the other bottom two, the white skink and the black rock skink, not excessively common around here, but they are definitely found around here. All right, now look, I do need to do something, and we'll just go back to this last slide. It was a bit rude of me, in fact. So I just want to say a massive thank you to two people, especially Mike Swan, who was a keeper at Melbourne Zoo and Ben Hilsel Sanctuary, and now is a mentor and works with the Lilydale High School reptile program. So he's a mentor to a lot of the students there, and he's been doing that kind of mentoring for a very, very long time because, I was, pimply little teenager walking from Mount Evelyn to Lilydale to buy reptile books from him and him helping me learn as much as I could about these reptiles. And he's been kind enough to let me use some of his photos because I'm not the best photographer in the world. So the southern water skink and black rock skink are his photos there. The swamp skink there is a photo from an amazing photographer and a good friend of mine, Nick Volp, who is also, he's a really young bloke who's just incredible photographer. He's up in Northern Territory at the moment, the lucky dude. And all these photos here are from Mike Swan. So just a big thanks to Mike Swan for that, because I generally don't take photos of tiny skink things running around as much as I love them. I'm more likely to take a photo of a lace monitor climbing up a tree. But anyway, these are just 6 of the, potentially 8 or 9 species of skink found around the Yarra Ranges. I haven't actually included all of them because we don't have enough time or space to get through each different little skink species. And, you could argue there's a number of little skink species that are found on the edges of the Yarra Ranges up towards, just outside, like Flowerdale and down towards, Cardinia, or at the back of the Yarra Ranges heading towards, the Cathedral Ranges and areas like that, or even towards Warrandyte. And once it gets dry, you get different species as well. But look, the 3 most common you guys are likely to find in your backyards, from number 1 being the garden skink. That is the most common little skink found in everyone's backyard. Weasel skinks are found in cooler and wetter areas. I think weasel skinks are absolutely gorgeous little lizards. They're a bit bigger than the garden skinks, and they've got these amazing long, slightly prehensile tails, which is cool. They also a lot of these skinks will lay communal nests, so all the females get together. And I'm kicking myself now because I do actually have a photo of one of those nests in my backyard, and I didn't put it in today. Just a heap of eggs together, and they'll all lay them together. One of the other species, the other 2 species you might find a little bit more, not as common, but still definitely found around backyards. So obviously garden skink and weasel skink are most common, followed by delicate skinks and McCoy skinks. As a child, we just called them yellow-bellied sliders or yellow-bellied skinks. So the really long little skink here, and that's the bottom one in the middle, and they have a bright yellow belly. They are absolutely stunning underneath. So you also get the southern grass skink and the Spencer skink. And if you want to see the gorgeous, funny little striped Spencer skink running around there up at the Ada tree, like they're running all over it. It's fantastic. It's got this 300-year-old tree with hundreds of little Spencer skink all running around the base. And they've got to watch out because the alpine copperheads are quite common around there for them. So they're just some of the little skinks that we do find in our backyards, all very vulnerable to your pet cats, or, native predators such as kookaburras and snakes and things like that as well. So you can make a great little lizard garden for them, just long native grasses and lots of places for them to hide. Now, the 2 dragon species we get in the Yarra Ranges aren't really common. There's some areas where you've got good densities of them, but they're not going to be widespread throughout. For instance, you definitely don't get either species down on the flats, down towards Coldstream and Yarra Glen between Hillsville. It's that green flat area will not house, be suitable habitat, sorry, for either species. But once you start getting up to Sugarloaf, for instance, that dry, rocky habitat, you definitely do get the Jackie Dragons. We get Jackie Dragons around the front of the Dandenong Ranges, that dry habitat again. There's areas around Yarra Junction that you can get them as well towards, Gladysdale and areas like that. And some of the drier western slopes definitely get the Jackie Dragons. In the lower areas, I grew up with these being my favourite lizard. They still are. I think they're just a stunning little dragon lizard. Very common on the Mornington Peninsula, around the Ocean Grove area. Extremely common along the coast towards Gippsland and right up the east coast of Australia. They're like a small to medium-sized dragon. Lots of personality, these Jackies, and I'll show you some in a sec. I've got 3 of our colony sitting next to me, which we'll look at in a minute. And then you have a much more elusive and slightly different looking mountain dragon. They can be bright red as well, so they can be really stunning. They're quite uncommon. I've only seen one really honestly once around this area. You do get them in some of the drier, more open areas up on top of the mountains and towards King Lake as well. But around the Yarra Ranges, most likely you're going to see them more around the above Hillsville and above Warburton, Mount Donabuang, but it's got to be a bit more open. They can't be in that wet kind of green area within those forests. So let's have a look at the Jackies. These were the first. In Victoria, you do need a wildlife licence. Don't you try and run down the hallway like you did before. One of these dudes decided to go for a run around the house. These were the first licensed native animal I kept as a teenager to, kind of get this zoo running as such. And they're still literally one of my favourite little lizards. Just a tiny little dragon. I mean, only as big as my hand. Like, that's in comparison to things like big water dragons or bearded dragons found in other parts of Victoria. These little Jackie dragons are just such charismatic little animals to watch. If you're lucky enough to see a couple of them in the wild, try and stay out of sight and just watch them, because the dragon lizards like this are so charismatic with their communication. So there's lots of head bobbing, and they'll wave their arms at each other, and they'll get into little scuffles with each other, and they'll sit up on top of their post, bobbing their head and waving their arm and wiggling their tails at each other. And they're a great little lizard. They change shade as such, not so much colour. So this animal, when it's warmed up a bit, will go much lighter and more caramels and tans in there, and it's darker because it's cold. So it's going to warm up quicker being darker. They've got that beautiful long whip-like tail, and they're a semi-arboreal species. So they're going to be sitting generally on the ground on posts and, on little bushes and things like that. They're just an absolutely stunning little dragon. One of the areas we used to see a lot of these beautiful creatures is down at the back of, kind of back of Lilydale, between Wonga Park and Lilydale, along the river. Unfortunately, a lot of people, kids will see these guys and try and catch them and take them home. So the population is not as good as it used to be down there, which is a bit sad. So guys, once again, if you do see these gorgeous little creatures in the wild, please leave them where they are. If you're like me, you're just enthralled by these beautiful animals and do want to, potentially have a pet one, you do need a license. You need the right experience and knowledge to keep them. So research and then buy them from a reputable breeder or, reputable pet shop. But don't ever take them from the wild, because in some areas, Jackie Dragons and blue tongues and things like that, their numbers have really declined because people take them home from holiday spots, and it's not ideal. But they're absolutely just a great little lizard. I love having little dragons like this set up in my house, because you can just sit there and watch them all day. So, and even better, go out in the bush and photograph them and see them in the wild. So one of our two of the only dragons we get here in the Yarra Ranges. We do get a couple other dragon species that might accidentally be let go. There is introduced populations of the eastern water dragon and Gippsland water dragon living along parts of the Yarra River. They are not indigenous to the area. They are indigenous to Victoria, but not the Yarra Ranges. They're not native here. In fact, Gippsland water dragons found in Walhalla, so not that far from here, but and eastern bearded dragons are found as close as Flowerdale to the Yarra Ranges. So, but we don't actually get them naturally. Oops, sorry. We don't naturally get them occurring in this region. Right, let's move on. Turtles. Okay, so we only have the one species of turtle that's supposed to be around the Yarra Ranges, and that is obviously the eastern longneck, as we put up here. So eastern longnecks are native to the area. There is some debate about that. There is a great article I should probably pull up at some point and have another read of, that suggests that eastern longnecks weren't actually native to the Yarra Ranges or Melbourne at all. And, even from when people first started settling Melbourne, they'd go and keep a turtle, kids would keep a turtle as a pet from the other side of the Great Divide, which is where they're more common. And, they've established in Melbourne now. But, it's still a bit of debate on that, and it doesn't matter because longnecks are found in every single pond, dam and waterway, large pond around the Yarra Ranges area. So the eastern longneck is a medium-sized Australian turtle and has a long neck. This one is really shy. I shouldn't have grabbed this guy out. This is our oldest one. This is probably the biggest eastern longneck turtle that you'll see. This is massive for an eastern longneck. Most of the time they're about half this size. So this one is quite old. This was given to us a little while ago, and it's a bit shy for a wildlife park that was shutting down. But it's a beautiful big old turtle. You gonna hide in there? And because because of COVID, we haven't been using our turtles much for shows. We haven't held this one for about 6 months almost. It's been dormant over winter, so she's a bit upset, and she's making a really bad smell. Basically, she stinks, and that's one of their ways of defending themselves. Whereas we've got cute little baby turtles we use a bit more regularly in our online shows, and they don't make the smell because they're used to handling. They've got the hard shell, obviously, to protect themselves, which is made of keratin, same stuff as your fingernails. And these guys definitely are a great addition to any farm dam. Please don't pick them up when you see them and put them in your dam, but they'll make their way there themselves. They'll travel, on warm, rainy days or sometimes in evenings. As long as it's not too hot and overcast days where there's a bit of rain, it's a great day in spring and summer for them to move, so they don't overheat and they don't dry out over long distances. And they'll move between the Yarra and any dam pretty much, or even any of the Linda Creek and Lurdale Lake and places like that. So they'll move, throughout their different waterways to new habitats. I mean, when I was a kid, my first pet turtle was one, and at the time, Mum and Dad weren't aware of this, and I was only very young. We found one in our backyard. Now, we lived at the top of the hill in Mount Evelyn, which is not really close to any waterway, so we have no idea how he ended up there. We ended up taking that after a few months and putting that in Linda Creek because we figured that's where it came from. But these guys here are pretty much spread throughout all those waterways and doing us, a great duty by keeping the waterways clean. They will scavenge on dead fish and dead animals in the water, so they're an important part of that ecosystem. They'll eat, mosquito larvae when they're small and yabbies and all kinds of small things. So they're a really important part of aquatic ecosystems around the Yarra Ranges in Melbourne. Now, the other two, potentially three species that we get in the Yarra Ranges are the short-necked turtle, the Murray River turtle, which is generally being released or accidentally or purposely brought in. And we also very rarely in the Yarra Ranges get the broad-shell turtle. So imagine a long-necked turtle that shell gets about this big and its neck is even longer than its shell and it's got a big flat head. And compared to this guy, which you can't see her head because she's very shy, she's in there somewhere. The broad-shell turtle is Australia's largest species of freshwater turtle and pretty impressive. They're not supposed to be here in the Yarra Ranges at all. They're found much further north. And then there's a turtle we really need you to keep an eye out for. Now, if you go for a walk around Lurdale Lake, you might see the signs about red-eared sliders. So an American species of turtle that's really aggressive and invasive to other wildlife. There's photos of them on the net, red-eared sliders, and on the notice board at Lurda Lake there. If you see one, please immediately report it to the Department of Environment, because that is a noxious pest. We don't want the turtle version of cane toads here in Victoria, and literally not far off the mark there. They're not poisonous, but they're just as bad. So if you do see any turtle with red markings along the face there, either side, it's really important you contact DELP immediately, or even your council or someone like me, and we can refer it to the right person, because that animal needs to be caught and removed immediately. So exotic turtles don't belong in our waterways. They're a really big issue. But we love these guys. Please be careful. We had to drive to Ngambie the other day to pick up some animals, and we saw like 6 on the road because it was slightly misty. It was nice and warm, bit of rain here and there, and you know, unfortunately, some of them were already dead. So we did stop every single time. I used to jacket to pick them up because they stink. They have glands under their back legs and front legs, and they stink, and you'll smell like that for about a couple of hours. So I'd pick them up with something else, move them to the side of the road, the direction they were heading towards. Otherwise, we've got to do it all again. And you know, a good 15 metres, 10 metres off the road towards the direction they're heading towards. Please don't put them in your car thinking they're lost and take them home. We've had that happen. We had one guy ring up and say, oh, he'd come back from Swan Hill and brought a turtle that he found that was lost on the side of the road back to Melbourne. I mean, that animal, it just travelled from Swan Hill to Melbourne unnecessarily. So just give them a helping hand so they don't become turtle pancakes. But you know, that's probably the only time we're ever going to ask people to touch reptiles in the wild, is long-necked turtles or any turtle, and to put it off the road. Please put your hazards on, be safe, put a high vest on if you have it, and just be aware of traffic. You know, we don't want you getting skittled as well. All right, so here's the 2 smaller species of snake. Let's move on to the snakes that you find around the area. You'd be pretty lucky to see either of these in the wild. Generally, we get called out to these on snake jobs, and you might go, well, they're not really that common around the Yarra Ranges. We've got white-lipped snakes near the playground at launching place there, right next to, just down the road from Log Cabin Pizza, you know, in the oval behind them. There was a white-lipped snake there that someone saw, and we used to live around there, and people thought every wild snake was a lost escapee of ours, which was not the case. So they are a really cool little snake. We do have one of them in captivity. Unfortunately, it's about shedded skin, and we don't interact with our snakes when they're doing that. It stresses them out. So white-lipped snakes are a lizard feeder only. We've got ours on mice, which took a long time and a lot of hard work, but you can see in that photo, it's eating a garden skink, and you can see how big it is. So the one on the right there, that is a white-lipped snake feeding on a garden skink, a tiny little skink. This is a very small species of snake. So they don't grow very large at all. They're very little. They are venomous. They are capable of a venomous bite. So it doesn't matter how big it is, what it looks like. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. But they are a pretty well-tempered snake. So they're not like the bottom one there, the small live snake that will stand up, you know, a third of its body and try and bite you, even though it's tiny. So white-lipped snakes are diurnal. This tiny snake comes out during the day. Tempting fate with kookaburras and things to catch lizards, but they are very pretty. They come in a range of different colours, from grey to brown to black in the high country to this beautiful tan colour. The most amazing one I've ever seen was found near the brickworks in a house down near Montrose Reserve, and that one was purple. So like a maroon purple, stunning looking animals. They can come in all these different colours. So, but they're very small, and it doesn't matter how small they are, they can once again still give a venomous bite, so don't touch them. The small-eyed snake, that's a picture of a baby one there on the bottom. They look a lot like red bellies. We often get called to these around Hillsville, rarely around Warburton on occasion though. And sometimes in the Dandenongs, but you won't find them pretty much away from the mountains around this area. Very, very common as you head towards Sugarloaf and Kangaroo Ground outside of the Yarra Valley, though. So that area seems to have quite a lot of them. It's quite rocky and they like that. So they are often found under rock. This small snake, though, as its name suggests, has a very small eye. It's nocturnal. Doesn't really use eyesight to hunt its prey. And don't be fooled, they do look like a red belly, a small red belly. They have sometimes pinkish to reddish tummies and they're grey and black and glossy. But these guys are actually potentially, size for size, are more dangerous than a red belly. They're a small snake with a big attitude and quite toxic venom. So please don't interact with these guys if you come across them. Once again, just call ourselves for snake removal and don't pick these guys up. But they, you know, we've got them in a near a garage in Hillsville, out towards Badger Creek there, and even up on Mount Tubawong as well. So, you know, these guys are found kind of around the base of the mountains and the mountainous areas. So, and we did remove one up at the back of Yarra Junction, so just at the base of those hills there. Right, so the most common snakes we're going to see in the Yarra Ranges are these three species, and pretty much the majority of the Yarra Ranges is going to be one of three, or potentially two. We do have another two bigger snakes that are found on the very edge of the Yarra Ranges but are not distributed throughout, and that's the red belly and the brown. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But tigers, to give you an idea of tiger distribution, we've caught them pretty much closer to the Yarra. So right through, anywhere from Powelltown right through to Bunyip State Park and, you know, out towards Hoddles Creek. Very, very common around Hillsville, very, very common around Warburton, very common around the back of Yarra Glen there, and up in the hills. Dixon's Creek, really common around that area. Very common right through, you know, Warrandyte, the back of Lilydale where the Yarra is. Not so, we've never actually found one ourselves towards Mount Evelyn or the Dandenongs. They are around there, but they're pretty scarce around there for some reason, whereas copperheads are more common around there. So as a child growing up in Mount Evelyn, we found more lowland copperheads than anything. There's quite a few copperheads in parts of Mount Evelyn, but never came across a tiger myself in Mount Evelyn at all, or you know, the southern side of Lilydale heading towards Montrose, never really come across tigers there. Not saying they're not there though. And definitely, you know, like where I live now, like we moved in and we moved a log up here towards Warby and found a baby tiger snake straight away. So a lot of our snake removals and call outs are actually towards, you know, the back of the Yarra Ranges and the northern and eastern side. The alpine copperhead, this is really interesting. You can see a slight difference in their faces. So if you look at the alpine copperhead, and I reckon we can zoom in here. There we go. We have a good look at that alpine copperhead. You get these white triangles and sharp markings on that top and lower jaw, and a very definitive brown head. They all have bands at the back of the neck. And you can see how that alpine copperhead looks a bit different to the lowland there. It's very subtle, and I don't expect people to look at a copperhead and know what species it is. The best way to identify these guys is by their name. So I have caught lowland copperheads in Wesburn and Millgrove on the flats there. If you're heading towards Warburton, for instance, on the left-hand side of the road, and as soon as you go up the hill, you get alpine copperheads, and there you go. That's just pretty much how they're defined by their habitat. Really stunning snakes, the copperheads. We absolutely love them, but we're not going to get into them yet because we're going to have a look at some of these animals for real. So let's get them out. Right, so we have a couple of tiger snakes here. There is a copperhead down on the ground in its box, and I reckon we'll start with the tiger snakes. Now we've got two tiger snakes here. We've got a male and a female. They're both born here at Black Snake Productions. These two rat bags, and one of them is an absolute rat bag today, and that's the girl at the front there. She is in a mood, so I'm not going to get her out because I'm sitting down in the chair. It's not the best, you know, position to be handling venom snakes as such. Come on, big boy. This guy is a much better behaved animal. Just close the door there. So this is a common tiger snake or eastern tiger snake. There is a few different subspecies as such, like Tasmanian and Western Australian and crefts and other things, but really easy to identify tigers. Big diamond-shaped head, silver grey head most of the time. They can have a yellow belly, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they have a cream belly. So the belly is not a good way to identify them. Often they have stripes. I've only ever caught, in all my years living in the Yarra Ranges and being a snake catcher around this area, I've only ever caught one tiger snake that is what we call unbanded. And that was just a jet black tiger snake out towards Reefton. So that was a very, very dark animal, and that makes sense. You know, the more of the forest you go, the darker they're going to be. But unbanded tiger snakes are more common towards, like, you know, Ocean Grove and Anglesea and the Otways and Warrnambool. You get a lot of unbanded singular coloured tiger snakes down there. But pretty much, guys, most of the tiger snakes we're going to find in the Yarra Ranges, like this young one animal, this is only like not even half grown, you know, will have those stripes, and they're very easy to identify. We're getting a lot of reports of people walking along the O'Shanassy Aqueduct from Don Valley to Warburton of tigers along there. It's a really good habitat for them at the moment. And once again, we have removed these right through Woorolloc, Backer Seville, the launching place, you know, Hoddles Creek, Yarra Junction, anywhere basically up into the hills from there. I've never caught one on the Dandenong Ranges myself. I know there's been a couple up there, but they're not a common species in that side of the Yarra Ranges, not at all. Once you head down towards the Mornington Peninsula and Pakenham, Tooradin, places like that, they start to increase in number again. But, you know, for instance, around Dandenong and those kind of central southeastern suburbs, you don't seem to get a lot of tiger snakes, mostly copperheads. But they are very, very common along the Yarra. So we have actually caught tiger snakes in the tunnel system that they maintain under the upper Yarra Dam, and I've caught them under the Westgate Bridge and in every single suburb in between. So these guys are a species that love those waterways, and they do follow them. And that's why I said, even though I haven't caught them along the Linda Creek, that does not mean they're there, because it's a waterway that they're going to be following. And I have caught one out in Monbulk before, and they've probably followed that waterway. They are definitely through Macclesfield, Yelling Bay. In fact, to the dismay of some of the keepers and people studying the helmeted honeyeater, they had video footage of a tiger snake climbing up there and eating one of the most expensive meals of its life, and that was some helmeted honeyeater chicks. So that sucked for the birds, and the tiger snake had a rare meal. Fourth most venomous snake in the world. Now, snakes aren't aggressive. You know, that's like saying all humans are aggressive. Snakes aren't aggressive, but they are very defensive. So I've been working with venomous snakes since I was about 16, and I've never been chased by a venomous snake. It's a couple of reasons. They don't have legs, so they can't actually chase you. And secondly, the only time a snake will advance on you is when it feels really threatened, and that's defending itself. So all you have to do is get a few meters away from that animal and it'll leave you alone. In all the years of catching snakes, the only time these guys have ever tried to bite me is when I try and grab them. So guys, number one way to stop yourself getting bitten by a snake is don't touch it. I just remembered as well, Jen, if you wanted to put up those polls, because we've got some polls about...
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just share that now. Just thought it was worth saying as well, just to remind everyone that Mike is a professional. Do not try what he's doing at home.
Yeah, I've been mentioning don't touch animals in the wild, don't touch this, don't touch that. So I was going to make a very clear statement with that one as well, and I think that's part of our poll today, isn't it?
Yeah, so what would you do, this poll is what would you do if you saw a snake in your yard, or if you have seen a snake in your yard, what have you done? But yeah, so we just had a few people just slightly concerned that you're in danger with that snake, but as I've told people, you are a professional and have been doing this for many years.
Oh, no, yeah, definitely. Look, if this was a wild tiger snake right now, I wouldn't be sitting on a swivel chair with this thing like almost on my lap. If this was a wild snake, it'd be trying to bite me on the face. This is Buffhead Jr. Unfortunately, if you've ever been to our Wandon, like the Wandon Field Days or Lurdale Show when we've done the snake pit talks, you might remember a tiger snake named Buffhead. He was our first ever tiger snake. As an adult, I had him for 15 years, and that's pretty amazing. So we don't actually know how old he was. And I'm pretty sure this is one of his offspring. So we're just going to call him Buffhead Jr. And like, this is a pet. So yes, it's a venomous animal, hence the hook, not my hand near its head. But I'm in no danger right now. I've got a first aid kit right in front of me anyway, which, you know, is not a great thing because you don't want to use it in the first place. It's necessary. But yeah, I wouldn't stress. No one should stress about me doing this. This is a pet snake. This is probably the calmest tiger snake I currently have. So like anyone that works with animals or pets, you know the behaviour of your animals. I know the behaviour of this snake back to front. So I like how I did put the move house there, and I like how someone's ticked it. That was just a joke.
Yeah, so we've got the results in there. So 41% would call a snake catcher, 57% would leave it be, 2% would move house, and I'm glad to say that no one would try and kill it. So that's really good.
You guys, you're awesome. So we put the kill it in there as a trick question, and no one took the bait. That's fantastic. So killing a snake in Victoria is highly illegal, and that's for two reasons. Because we don't go around smacking things on the head we don't like. You know, like we can't do that to everything we don't like. There'd be no politicians left, yeah? And there are more snakes in the grass than these dudes. So really important, guys, don't kill snakes because they are protected. You know, we can't just kill a native animal because it potentially is dangerous. And the number one reason for snake bite in Australia is people interacting with them accidentally or on purpose. So, you know, snakes don't chase people. They don't attack people. They don't bite us. They will only bite to defend themselves. That is the only reason snakes bite humans. Now, whether we're accidentally or purposely doing something. And that's why killing snakes is illegal, because that is the best way to, you know, get bitten. You know, and when we look at these animals, and if you get a chance to just watch a snake, they're incredible animals. They're beautiful. They've got some stunning colours on them, and they are really just beautiful creatures. Like the tiger snake coloration and variation in patterns in the Yarra Ranges is massive. And I love going to snake jobs and catching these guys just to see how different they can look to each other. And that's just one of the best parts of the job sometimes. And in copperheads, it's incredible. So, you know, the coloration within these guys and variation within copperheads in the Yarra Ranges is insane. One of my favourite memories as an early, you know, snake catching earlier on was going to a wedding to remove snakes at one of the wineries. It's the one on the left up near the big tree that's lit up. Jen, do you know the winery across the road from that as you head past Yarra Glen towards Dixon's Creek? It's the big winery on the left up on the hill just outside of Yarra Glen. Can't remember the name. Anyway, we went there and there was 3 copperheads. There was a female and 2 males that are going after the copperheads, as they do this time of year. And the female copperhead was black with a beautiful bright red belly. So a lot of people are mistaken about red bellies in the Yarra Valley because of black and red copperheads. One of the other copperheads was an olive tan green. So it's one of the few times we've seen that colour. And one of the other copperheads was a more prettier version of this guy. And he's a bit grumpy today, but he's all right. And this is a kind of a tan brown, like a caramel colour. So copperheads are massively varied. With such a massive variation in the colour, how do you identify this species? Well, it's actually quite easy. We don't actually really have brown snakes in the Yarra Valley. We only have red bellies kind of just in one end of the Yarra Ranges, sorry. So I'll look at them in a second. I'll explain that a bit better. But if you see a black and red snake and it's got any kind of markings around the head, and I'm going to come right around here for you guys because it is a bit difficult with the way we set up today to get the camera closer. All right. So, and I don't know how in shot that's going to be and how focused. There we go. Can you see that face? That white bottom and top lip, the copper-coloured head, but most importantly, see that contrasting band at the base of the neck? So all copperheads have that contrasting band, no matter the colour. So that black and red female had a light-coloured band at the base of the neck. This is a lighter animal, so it's got a darker one, which is really quite convenient because it kind of gives us an idea. And if you see a red-belly black snake, or what you think is a red-belly black snake, and it's got any white markings around its face at all, then it's not a red belly. It's got any dark or contrasting markings around its head, any patterning at all, then it's not a red belly black snake. If you see a larger snake that's brown and it's got these kind of markings around its face and its head, then it's not an eastern brown snake. Now, what are we going on now? about 18 years or so of snake removal around the Yarra Ranges, something like that. I've caught probably actually none in the Yarra Ranges, no brown snakes at all in the Yarra Ranges. So the brown snakes we found are all just literally outside of it. For instance, up towards Sugarloaf and Warrandyte, Wonga Park. They're the closest brown snakes we've found. As we head north from the Yarra Ranges, the only brown snakes I've found up towards Yea. So I found brown snakes in Glenburn, and it starts to dry out a bit there as we head towards those areas. But brown snakes as egg layers don't seem to live in the Yarra Ranges. They're definitely not around Powdertown, Warburton. They're definitely not around the Dandenong Ranges. They're not around Belgrave. They're not around Tacoma or Emerald. They're not in any of these areas up the back. There's no eastern brown snakes there at all. And there's pretty much no red bellies up that way at all either. So there's only 2 locations in the entire Yarra Ranges or the edge of this council that we have seen the red belly black snake. And we'll actually go and have a look at some photos of them now as well. So just quickly, you can see that contrasting band just at the back of the neck there on the lowland copperhead. And how the tiger snakes, usually have that silver grey head as well, which is pretty common with them. What time is it? Oh, I'll move a bit quicker. All right. So eastern browns are on the edge of the Yarra Ranges. They're not actually found in the council region at all, just on the edge. Red bellies are only just kind of found in certain areas. Basically, working with alongside or, talking to keepers at Hills of Sanctuary, 2 of the reptile keepers there, as I mentioned, Mike Swan and another guy, Mike Taylor, were my mentors at Hills of Sanctuary, and a snake catcher that was based out of Rowville. They were my mentors as a teenager that taught me everything I know about handling venomous animals and working with reptiles. And talking to all the snake catchers over the years, no brown snakes have ever been caught in the Yarra Ranges, but red bellies north of the old train line from Yarra Glen to Hillsville. So we've caught red belly black snakes in Dixon's Creek. We've caught them at the back of between Hillsville and Yarra Glen in all those like kind of dipping mountain areas, valleys, those little valleys. They do have some names up there. I can't remember the names. Up towards Chum Creek, sorry. We've caught some red bellies up towards Chum Creek. The closest south I've caught red bellies in that region is near Badger Creek and just south of Hillsville. But we don't get red belly black snakes in Montrose. We don't get them in Lilydale. We do not get them in the Dandenongs. We do not get them in Warburton. They're not out Yarra Junction. Where we start to get them from the south is they are found in Pakenham, and we have caught them between Bunyip and Jenbrook in that national park there. Not caught them, seen them there. So there has been red bellies that come up from the Gippsland area through that region. You do get red bellies up towards Glenburn, which makes sense considering the back of the Yarra Ranges they're found, like the northern side. And out of all the venomous snakes we're looking at today, the eastern brown snake is the only one that lays eggs. As you can see with our red bellies, that's a picture of babies the day after they're born. That's actually their father to the right. That was many years ago. We actually had a few litters of red belly black snakes, so they give birth. The biggest, a number of years ago, we had a tiger snake. We caught it at night and we released it the next morning. When we opened the bag, there was 40 babies in the bag, which is the highest amount we've ever seen born in one hit. So that female gave birth to 40 babies. Just a bit quickly, before we start taking questions and talking about some other stuff, and unfortunately, depending on what Jen says, we may not have time to do the first aid. But just here is a couple of species you might find on the edges of the Yarra Ranges. Look, there's heaps and heaps of little skinks and lizards and things, but just here's some of the main ones. So at the top right-hand corner, that's a picture of a water dragon, a greeny-looking dragon lizard. That's a Genoa falls before place, just completely destroyed by a fire similar to a nuclear bomb. I've been there since, and everything is burnt, unfortunately. And you do get water dragons introduced into the Yarra Ranges sometimes. The one in the middle at the top, that's a marbled gecko. and they are not native to the area, but very commonly found in houses and in firewood brought down from Western and Northern Victoria. The short-necked turtle we mentioned on the top left is introduced into the Melbourne area, but has established. If we go out towards Plenty Gorge, the other snake species we get around the Melbourne area is the little whip snake, which has actually caused a human death. It's a tiny species that would curl into a little ball in the size of your palm, but has killed someone. So it looks just like a baby brown snake. Up towards the Cathedral Ranges, and that's me holding my little colony, my breeding colony of Cunningham skinks, is a blue tongue-like lizard covered in spikes that live in rocks, and they're called Cunninghams. Don't ever pick one of them up. If it doesn't spike you, it will bite you and break your fingernail. So they are extremely powerful jawed little omnivorous lizards the size of a blue tongue. They're found at West and North of Melbourne, and they are a spiky little thing that lives in rocks. As we head out towards Glenburn, Flowerdale, and north of there, you find the eastern bearded dragon, more common towards Yea, Seymour, Nagambie, Bendigo. The eastern bearded dragon is a species commonly seen on the roads, and we saw one on the run, skidding across the road, running across the road the other day. So there's some of the, just outside the borders of the Yarra Ranges kind of reptiles that we'll have a look at there. So we're going to do questions as well now, and Jen, if there was anything you wanted to mention, but just as well, I'll leave that up on the screen. We do sell the snakebite kits I've had up on display. I'm happy to do a quick first aid demo if we have time, but yeah, we do offer 24-hour snake removal. So guys, please, if you do have a tiger snake in your bathroom at 2 o'clock in the morning, please feel free to give us a call, because that's not a great situation for anyone, and that is a situation we actually have been called out for a number of times as well. So there we go.
Thanks so much, Mike. That was fantastic. Absolutely loved seeing all your creatures and all that information. So much information that came out of you then. There was a lot to go through. We have so many questions as well. I just want to quickly, we've got 2 polls just to see how, what everyone's taking, what actions people are going to take following this webinar. As you had a few suggestions there for people, and I've thrown a few others in as well. So I just wanted to see what everyone has taken from that, what they're going to be changes they're going to be making. And then we have another webinar, another question about future webinars. So I don't think we're going to have time today for the first aid kit, but I just want to see in the next poll if people would like that. And now, unfortunately, as I said, we've got a bit of a 6-week break because of council elections, and we've got to wait till our new councillors are all sworn in. But once that's all done in early November, we'll be able to get our webinars back up again. So we'll just give people a few more moments for this actions question and see what hopefully people will be making some positive impacts into our environment to help all our reptiles and all our native animals, really. But yeah, I think, well, to cover one question actually, if someone just wanted to know, obviously you were talking when you had your snakes, these are hand-reared snakes, but have you ever been bitten by a snake?
No, I've had close calls, but I'm pretty good. So, no, yeah, I've had some very close calls, but pretty lucky so far.
Excellent. And I had a quick question, actually, just personally. You said that this was Buffhead Junior. Now, obviously, I've seen you do these sessions before in real life, and you had Buffhead. So, is that to suggest that maybe Buffhead is no longer with us?
Yeah, at the start of the year we moved, and Buffhead passed away, which is some people might find it a bit hard to understand how I could have been devastated by the loss of a pet tiger snake, because it's a tiger snake, but Buffhead was a big tiger snake that we bought as an adult when I started the business in like 2000, or just a bit after, 2007, I think it was. He was full grown, and we didn't know how old he was, but he was like our key animal for every demonstration. He was such a gentle creature. Like he never, ever tried to bite. Unlike another tiger snake I've got outside, who is an absolute nut job, like who just, there's another tiger snake I've got, if I had him on the side of this glass tank, he'd be sliding up and down with his mouth open, so he's not very friendly.
No, well, I can understand. I've seen you do these talks a few times, and I can absolutely understand why you'd be devastated. So I'm so sorry that Buffhead is no longer with us, but I'm glad he's got a junior taking over from him.
And the thing is,
Now,
we have 350 odd animals at any one time, and yeah, some of them I've had since I've got a frog I've had since I was a teenager, and I mean these things all have different lifespans, and that's just unfortunately the way it goes. So.
It is. Now we've got a really good response though to what actions people are going to be taking. So this is fantastic. So the majority, 81%, are going to be checking and moving injured wildlife from our roads, which will be good for a lot of creatures. 62% are going to stop using garden poisons such as snail bait. 31 are going to be keeping their cats indoors, and 16% are going to be taking their dogs to snake avoidance training. 58% are going to be reporting if they see an invasive species, such as that turtle you were mentioning earlier. Yeah. 75% are going to plant native vegetation in their garden. 70% are going to remove invasive weeds. 28% are going to join an environmental volunteer or friends or land care group if they haven't already. And 68% are going to tell their family and friends about what they've learned today. And as I've said to a couple of people, this has been recorded and will be on our website later this week. So you can check it out. If you missed anything, or if any of your family and friends have missed anything, you can check it out. But now let's go to some of these questions, because as I said, we've had many questions come in. We actually had an emailed question in early this morning, which was from Sienna, who has a water monitor living in their tree over summer. So she wants to know, are they venomous, and what does it do in the winter? Does it live in the tree all the time, or does it go somewhere else?
So that will be a lace monitor. We don't have, they're aquatic. Our river would probably turn them into an ice cube and they'd float down to the sea. But there'll be a lace monitor. And what we found a lot of the lace monitors do is they find like a hollow tree higher up that gets a lot of sun in the winter. And they'll actually sit in these hollow branches and shelter in them. And then if there's a bit of a nice sunny day, they'll come and sit out. A lot of the lace monitors will keep off the ground so they don't get wet in this kind of, it's a more southern area of Australia where they're found. And all reptiles in Australia do something called brumation. If they're going to go dormant, they don't hibernate. So even during some of the days in winter, we actually had some of our lizards in sunny days come out and sit in the sun, So a hibernating animal will sleep from one period to another and not wake up. But so they'll find a nice hollow that's got a good bit of sun, spring and winter, and that's where they'll brumate over winter.
Excellent. Thank you. And now I just realised I have one more poll, so I'm just going to launch that about what other webinars, wildlife webinars people would like to see, but then I'll come back and we will do some more questions as well. So if everyone can answer that poll. A couple more questions about blue-tongue lizards. So first off, why do blue-tongue lizards have blue tongues? And the other one was, someone has a blue tongue living in a pile of their rubbish. They want to clear that up, but they don't know what to do with the lizard. What do you reckon?
Clear the rubbish out. Be very careful that you don't hurt the lizard or anything, and let him maybe create like a little habitat for him with some, old tiles or flat rock, somewhere for him to hide, somewhere for him to go after that. It's like when we talked about the possums last time. Give them a habitat to move into, or housing to move into. Don't move the animal yourself, and then remove that original housing you don't want them in. That's probably the best way to go. What was the other question, sorry?
Why are blue-tongue lizards' tongues blue?
Oh, that's easy. They all sneak into lolly shops and eat all the blue lollies every night. We all know that. No, it's thought to be a threat defense. Bright colours in nature often scare away predators. So it's to help shock and scare off a predator with that bright colour, all of them being exposed as they do that stance that they're well known for, with their front legs up and mouth open, hissing with that blue tongue. And I just want to give, a bit of a heads up on my personal experience with this. We all probably picked up blue tongues as kids. And the reason I'm saying let's probably not do that is because, I've had my fingernails drop off and I've broken a finger being bitten by blue tongues that I picked up in the wild. So best leave them because they've got pretty strong jaws.
Yeah, that's some good advice. I think leaving all native animals where they are is probably the best thing to do. Yeah. But on that note, obviously,
that one exception of the turtles crossing the road is probably the only time I think it's safe to do that. As long as you're safe doing it, you're helping out, and it's not going to hurt anything.
Absolutely. But on that note, you are obviously a snake catcher.
Yeah.
So a couple of questions come in about where do you actually relocate the snakes that you catch?
Parliament. No. We have to release them within 5 kilometres in a suitable habitat away from people. Now, out here, that's pretty easy. Towards the city, they can get really tricky. So, you know, for instance, if I catch one in Yarra Junction, then I might just take it up to up near the O'Shanassy Aqueduct, up near the bush there or something. Or if I catch one in Yarra Glen, I might drop it down near the river, away from people, the back of a farm or something. We try and make sure that the animals have got a suitable habitat and it's not going to interact with people again. Some snake catchers, there's some really unscrupulous ones that will just catch snakes for 2 weeks straight, keep them in plastic tubs without food or water or anything, and then just dump them in one spot at once, which is really, really terrible. But I love these animals. I think they're absolutely awesome. So we won't put it back near people, but we want to make sure the animal still has a good chance of survival and is happy.
That's really, and that actually leads kind of into another question. There's a few people who are asking, what can they do on their own bush blocks or in their gardens to make it kind of reptile friendly? Can they, they build lizard hotels and things like that? Is there any suggestions you have?
Just a word of warning, when you're making it reptile friendly, you're making it lizard and frog friendly, you're making it snake friendly as well. So there's my disclaimer. If you don't want snakes, you can't really make it kind of lizard and frog and native animal friendly. Your bland parkland looking English gardens as such are going to not really be great habitat for wildlife. Pristine green lawns that are a centimetre high, evenly spaced with neat gardens with no undercover. That's not going to be habitat for snakes, lizards or frogs. Your bush block garden with ponds and lots of rock habitat and shelter, half hollow logs and fallen wood, fallen timber, tussock grasses, that's going to be suitable habitat for small native echidnas potentially, and birds like blue wrens and your water skinks and your frogs, and therefore your tiger snakes as well. So, you've got to try and look at how your garden is snake safety with your family and how natural you want to keep things and how much wildlife you want to, introduce, and naturally, obviously. But you can still make your house snake safe and still have beautiful native gardens away from the house and things like that. So, and a lot of people have learned to live with snakes as well. There's some great stories of people who have red belly blacks, which have never actually caused a human death, by the way. Red bellies aren't as dangerous as everyone makes them out. They're still highly venomous, don't touch them. But, they've got one living under their chook shed for 20 years or something, and they're happy with it there, and they know it's there. Snake knows the people are there, and they get along, and it's fine. So trying to come up with some sort of long-term solution to live with wildlife is great. Having a tiger snake at your back doorstep is not the same as having a red belly at your back doorstep. Tiger snakes are very defensive. If you step on them, they will bite. They've got the longest fangs in a Victorian snake, and they're the 4th most venomous snake on the planet potentially. So it's not something you want to get bitten by, and so we have to kind of find an equilibrium with them.
And that kind of leads us into another question. Obviously, we've had a question from Cooper. If someone was interested in getting a venomous snake, I presume as a pet, what is a good one to get for a first timer?
It's not something we promote. You have a taipan. Look, in Victoria, you have to be over 18. There is a couple of snake handling courses you can do, but the best experience ever is having someone that will mentor you in that. I wanted working with venomous snakes from a young age, and it wasn't, until I really had huge amount of hours working alongside other reptiles, more dangerous reptiles, that I actually got into venomous snakes. But it's not some advice I can easily give, because this is not like working with a dangerous bit of mechanics or firearms. That's what we call static danger as such. If you do everything safely with firearms, it's never going to go badly, because it's not going to jump up and shoot itself. Whereas a tiger snake, or even for instance some of the other species of venomous snakes, one day might just have a different mood and decide today they're going to try and bite you. So yeah, it's not something I can strongly recommend.
And sort of leading off from that, Ivan has asked, do snakes recognize people they interact with often? For example, yourself, do your pets kind of recognize you?
I believe so. Some of them are some species of snake aren't as intelligent as others. And anyone that's kept any multiple breed of dogs will see that with dogs. Some dog breeds are, like I had a Cavalier, and beautiful dog, but dumb as anything. Like just lovely, sweet, loving dog, but not very intelligent. I had a beagle, extremely intelligent. You get the same with snakes. Snakes are a lot like dogs in their personalities and the way they behave. We had a coastal taipan that used to watch everything I did in the snake room. Like just sit there watching me around the entire room. Then we have tiger snakes that just stare blankly into a corner all day, and they're not the most intelligent animals compared to other snakes. So some snakes do and some snakes don't. The monitor lizards are very intelligent. The crocodiles are very intelligent that we've got, and they definitely can learn and do things. So you can train monitors to an extent, which is pretty cool.
We have an interesting question here from Catherine, who says that a traditional owner once told her to pour cloudy ammonia around her fences after she saw a copperhead. Does that do anything? Is that a myth?
No, there's nothing like that. There's literally every year at this time of year, every single year pops up on Facebook is ingredients to make snake repellent oil, and it's got like lavender and this and that in it, and I'm just thinking, the snake won't like the smell and then slither straight over it. So there's a few things people will do to try and keep snakes away. I'd love if this was an open audience and I could get everyone to put their hands up and we'd see all these hands up going, do you have snake solar repellers in your backyard? And people will go, yes, I do. And I'm like, you've wasted your money. We've literally in the Yarra Ranges and other areas caught snakes wrapped around snake repellers that are on it and working. They're a scam, they don't work, so please don't buy them because it gives you a false sense of security. Keep rodent numbers down using traps and keeping chook food and bird food and pet food contained. If you have a chook pen, put a concrete floor in. It's not, a massive job, but it's easy to clean. It's easy to stop rodents getting in. It's easy to keep the food off the ground a bit more. Don't create habitat right up against houses. Like when we moved to the property we're at now, we were so dead keen on building a water feature with a little stream running right along the house under the walkway that goes up to the front deck. And I'm thinking, no, I might not do that. It's a good way to bring tiger snakes to my front veranda. So we're going to put that away from the house now. So, and there's a house we visit every few years in Diamond Creek, I think it is, Eltham, that they get us, and there's a beautiful native gardens with water features right through it, right to the front door, and there's tiger snakes all through it all the time. So build that away from the house, like keeping snakes away from the property. You can create a snake-proof fence. It's a lot of money, a lot of work, like a really solid colour bond fence that you can't potentially put your pinky finger through any gap or hole. And you can do that bordering a habitat to the property. For instance, like if you're on the aqueduct or near the Yarra or a farmland and you're backing onto that. We've had some people do that near Coldstream where they're back onto farmland and stop copperheads coming into their backyard. So being just wise about it, so that can help too.
And that kind of leads, I know we're kind of obviously running over time, and if people obviously aren't able to stay, that's fine. If you're unable to stay and your question doesn't get answered, please do send me an email. I will send out an email early next week to kind of give you a link to where this has been recorded and things. But I just thought it was important to ask one question here, which is very quickly, what do you do if you get bitten by a snake?
Yeah, look, I'm happy to stay as long as you want because I'm just going to scrub a turtle pond out after this. I'm not overly looking forward to that, like this green slime and scrubbing brushes. So ask away. So you buy a Black Snake Productions snake. No, I'm just joking. Snake bite kit. So you need a first aid bandage. We recommend these ones. A pressure bandage from the chemist is fine. The ones that we use were helped designed by our sister company in Sydney, which is Safe, and that is the Smart Bandage. The Smart Bandage is a setter press, tighter than a normal pressure bandage. It's got if you've seen us at any of our demos, you'll have seen me doing this. It's got the rectangles that stretch to squares, so that's how tight you apply it. Don't suck the venom Don't cut it. Don't run around in circles screaming. Don't drink. Don't take alcohol. Don't do anything like that. So no medication. If you've been bitten on the, the thumb here, for instance, we're going to start at the end of the limb, go under and over the thumb. Then I'm going to go over the bite a couple of times, a little bit tighter where the bite was. And then as we move up the limb, we just overlap a little bit. So this is great with this bandage because it's got that advertising, the writing on the side. And we just overlap just that, just a little bit with the bandage on itself, just to make sure it's got firm, even covering. That's really tight too, by the way. Starting to look like a mummy. Get it on quick, calm. Just be real calm. In Australia, you're more likely to die from falling off a ladder than a snake bite, even if you've been bitten by the snake. The first aid we've got is incredible. The snakes, we're so lucky to have these venomous snakes. It's awesome because they've got really short fangs. The venom works through our lymphatic system. It's not generally localized. The red belly is, which means you can pretty much stop the venom in its tracks. So you put that pressure bandage on calmly, quickly, and effectively. You can practice it a few times. Our snake bite kits have got and these are for sale, by the way. We've got the splints. This is really cool. It's like a foam splint with metal in it, and it like those old wrist things that used to snap on the wrist that I had when I was a kid. Kind of like that, but a little bit different. And you can put that splint up your arm vertically there, and it'll help hold on. You've got a bandage to put that on. Instructions, and really important, mark the bite site. So let's say I was bitten here, big circle, cross, write the time as well. Don't take that bandage off. Don't move. Call 000. We get a lot of my neighbours are hunters, and they're like, "What do I do if I'm bitten in the middle of the bush? There's no possibility of air cover because of trees." So it's always good to have a bit of a plan in place. Don't go by bush by yourself if you can help it. If you are going bush by yourself, then detail a direction where you're going, a map, so that if you are bitten and you can get, your GPS locator to work or your phone to work, they know where you are. They know, don't deviate from the track you've given on the map. Always take a first aid kit with pressure bandages, and always make sure in this day and age you have some sort of electronic device that you can get help with, because there's no reason why we shouldn't, like 50, 200 years ago, of course, we didn't have that kind of that ability to contact people. We do now, so use it. It's fantastic to have. Mobile phones are bad and good, and this is where they're really, really good. And all the GPS location devices, emergency beacons and things are great. There you go. There's a really, really, really quick snake bite first aid lesson.
Thank you for that. I mean, we had about 69 people were interested in a snake safety talk, so I think that might be something we'll try and look at later in the year or maybe early next year. Yeah. Hopefully, but obviously I would recommend everyone check out your Facebook and website, the Black Snake Productions Facebook and website. I know you've got sort of videos and tips and things of there as well of ways to stay protected.
Yeah. I was just going to say, just quickly as well, if you're interested in reptiles of Victoria, this is a fantastic book. It's been like 30 years in the making. But this is pretty much get every single reptile in Victoria. So any enthusiasts out there, go for this book. If you are interested in venomous snake safety training, we're doing it online as well. Like we can do it all here, and we'll get more than just a couple of things out, and we'll milk venomous snakes online as well. So workplaces that need that. So we do train the local council staff regularly, and we do Melbourne Water and all the other groups locally as well. So if you're in a workplace where you come across snakes, we can offer that as well now.
Yes, and I can definitely attest to how good that was and how very useful it was for our outdoor crew. We've had a few questions about sort of pets, really. Obviously, we talked about the venomous snakes, but what about sort of non-venomous snakes, turtles, lizards and things? What kind of animals do you recommend for people, reptiles, to get as pets?
Look, I've been keeping reptiles as pets since I was a kid. So, there's always the first ones, the blue tongues. So we've got where we are up in the hills here. It's a bit wet. It's a bit cool, a bit damp for them. So over winter, we bring all our blue tongues inside. Where I used to live in Launching Place, they stayed outside because we had a bit more sun in winter there. If you live in an area where you've got a bit of sun outside pretty much all year in a good spot, a dry spot, you can build a really easy lizard pit. It's about 1 metre, 1.2 if you want to go bigger, 1.5 metre high, metal fence. just in a, gate or something in it. So no way for those lizards to dig out. I find the best way to keep reptiles is if you can keep the local species naturally, they just do so much better, and it's much nicer. And ours is just below our kitchen window, and we just sit there watching them while we're having dinner or breakfast or whatever. So it's fantastic. Like, you can watch those lizards there. The kids pick them up and play with them. They're really gentle with them. Otherwise, if you want to get pythons, there is no native pythons to the Melbourne area, but diamond pythons and, carpet pythons are found in other areas of Victoria. Once again, every animal that is a pet has to be bred and born in captivity under a license. One of the biggest problems we've got with those two species of pythons in Victoria, they're both threatened to endangered, and part of the reason is poaching for the pet trade. So we're really trying to, get people to stop that kind of action, because it's devastating, especially after the bushfires. With, those animals really don't need to have people taking them from the bush. But look, there's many people who breed multiple species of python. I've been breeding some pythons for generations here that we've got. And there's a couple of really good pet shops, Amazing Amazon, Totally Reptiles in Greensboro's really good pet shop. And they've got, pythons there. Otherwise, find a local breeder who breeds them. But make sure you do your license. And guys, with any pet, research, and it's for life, yeah? So if you buy a turtle that's this big because it's cute, then be prepared, if it's a short-necked turtle, to have something that's going to be this big and live the same amount of time as you. Okay, there's really a huge amount of people buying baby turtles because they're cute and then dumping them in waterways because they outgrow their 2-foot fish tank. Now, the short-necked turtle is not suitable to live outdoors year-round in the Yarra Ranges, unless that's a really good sunny, open position with lots of sun to keep the water a bit warmer. So you're looking at a short-necked turtle living in a 6-foot fish tank at minimum in your lounge room, so they get quite big. We bring ours in over winter. I've just put them outside now, and we've got a short-necked turtle that's like 50 years old. It's like that big. So they take a lot of care and work.
Thanks, Mike. I just realised we had another question from someone who emailed in earlier, and they wanted to know, they've seen a snake, but they weren't sure which one on their 3/4 acre block. They swim in their sort of converted swimming pool pond. How likely are they to see the snakes in the pond? And I guess that just goes for even just how likely are snakes to be in the river where people like to swim and things like that.
So snakes, I'm just going to get Boss out so you guys have something to look at other than my ugly mug. So snakes will spend a lot of time in water, like tigers and copperheads, looking for frogs and fish and things. One of the best things I've ever seen was a tiger snake swimming underwater, catching goldfish, bringing them to the surface and eating them. The lady wasn't too impressed. I was taking photos. She's like, "What about my goldfish?" I'm like, "Oh." Yeah, they will spend time in water. You get a lot of tiger snakes swimming through the Yarra. They'll be close to the water. Snakes can bite in water, but they're not generally going to go straight for you as a moving, organism, an animal in the water, a predator potentially. But yeah, like there is that risk that there could be in there. But like I swim in the Yarra all through summer. Like I've never had an issue. And if you see a snake, just move away from it. So it's not something you kind of go, "Oh, I'm not going to swim in there because there might be a snake coming towards me or something." Just be safe. Check the edges. Check where your surroundings before you go in. If you do have snakes living in that habitat, then make sure you got a couple of pressure bandages close by as well. So just learning to live with them. But yeah, just being cautious of them as well.
And I think we've only really got time for one more, because obviously we're 15 minutes over, but there's been a few questions about legless lizards. And do we get any in the Yarra Ranges? And what sort of information do you have about legless lizards?
Yeah, I was very tempted to add a legless lizard to the last slide, the animals close to the Yarra Ranges, but I couldn't find any decent photos of the striped legless lizard. So up near Yea, you do get the striped legless lizard, which is actually quite an endangered species. They're quite a lot of trouble at the moment. They're grasslands of Western Victoria, the most endangered habitat in the world, and they're wet central and Western Victoria. So there's not many striped legless lizards left. There's populations on the peninsula of hooded scaly or common eastern scalyfoots, which are another type of legless lizard. which is pretty incredible because I didn't think they were anything, you know, originally when I was younger, didn't think they were anywhere like left around Melbourne. But there's absolutely no legless lizards in the Yarra Ranges, unfortunately, which is quite sad. We don't, in Victoria, we don't have a huge diversity or populations as such of legless lizards. It's like if you go to parts of Queensland and South Australia and Western Australia, you can look in tussocks and spinifex grasses and find sometimes up to 2 or 3 species of legless lizard. We have a couple of species of legless lizards here. We've got a Burton's legless lizard, which eats other lizards in the wild, and they're found up near the Mallee and north of the Little Desert, Big Desert, and Murray Sunset National Park in northern Victoria. And then you have scalyfoots, which are found, you know, along the east coast. We did find a scalyfoot in Mallacoota a couple of years ago, but I don't know how their population is going because they're really reliant on the heathland in that area, which is all burnt. So hopefully they're not completely wiped out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. I'm so sorry to everyone whose questions we didn't get to. We could have really stayed chatting to you for hours, I think, Mike, to put you off doing your chores today. But I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. If there are still burning questions, as I said, please do get in touch with me or go to Mike's website of Black Snake Productions. If you just Google that and you'll find him on Facebook as well. So I recommend that. But otherwise, thank you so much. We will be back in early November with more webinars. But I think, Mike, we've got a few people interested in endangered species and frog webinars. So we might get you back potentially at the start of next year to answer some more questions about the wonderful native wildlife that we're lucky to have in the Yarra Ranges and beyond. Yeah. So massive thank you to you and to all your creatures today for behaving so well. And thank you to everyone for joining us. So I hope everyone has a wonderful sunny day today and we shall see you next time.
Thanks guys, keep snakes safe and see you next time.